Ever get that feeling? You're looking at something new, maybe a spreadsheet, some code, even a recipe, and it's like your brain just AWOL.
Happens to the best of us.
Right. And then suddenly something clicks. Like magic, you're fluent in pie charts, or sourdough's your new best friend.
And it makes you wonder, what was all that struggle about?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And it turns out there's a method behind those aha moments. And it's not just about how smart you are as an individual. Today, we're diving into how that same process applies to entire companies, especially when we're talking about innovation.
What's so interesting is your ability to learn new stuff, to use it. It's not just raw brain power. It's about having the right foundation already in place.
Like, you can't build a skyscraper on a foundation meant for a garden shed, right?
Exactly. Companies run into that same problem when they're trying to innovate. Just having smart people doesn't automatically equal amazing new products or strategies.
Right. It's not like mixing baking soda and vinegar. You don't just combine smart ingredients and get an explosion of success.
Exactly. And that's where this deep dive comes in. We're going to unpack this idea of absorptive capacity.
Absorptive capacity.
Yeah, it's this concept from researchers Cohen and Levinthal back in 1990. They looked at why some companies seem to just soak up new ideas, no problem, and turn them into wins.
So is it kind of like a company's ability to, well, absorb new information and actually use it?
You got it. It's their learning agility, how well they not only understand new stuff, but actually use it to innovate. And the big thing Cohen and Levinthal found was that it all comes down to the type of knowledge a company's got.
Okay, now this is where it gets interesting for our listeners.
Yeah.
Because we're not just talking about having a bunch of facts memorized, right?
Not even close. It's not about how much you know, but what types of knowledge you have. Cohen and Levinthal, they found two main categories: closely related knowledge and diverse knowledge.
Okay, let's break those down. First up, closely related. What's that mean when we're talking about businesses?
So it's the expertise that's directly related to what a company already does well, their strengths. It's like that foundation we were talking about before. Let's say you're a company, you make mobile apps, and you want to get into augmented reality. Well, all your knowledge about app development, user interface design, coding, that's your closely related knowledge.
It's like you got to know the basics of building a regular house before you can start experimenting with geodesic domes or yurts or whatever.
Exactly. You need that base to build on.
Okay, that makes sense. But what about diverse knowledge? Sounds a little more, well, diverse.
It is, and that's where things get really interesting. See, this kind of knowledge, it's not limited to your company's immediate field. It's about having a bunch of different perspectives, a variety of expertise, even if it doesn't seem connected at first.
So you're saying you want a team with all sorts of backgrounds, different areas they're experts in.
Yeah.
Even people who might think a little differently.
You nailed it. Because often the most groundbreaking innovations, they come from connecting ideas that didn't seem related at all. It's about seeing a problem with fresh eyes, eyes that have seen other things. You know, that's something Cohen and Levinthal actually saw in their research.
Really? Give us an example, something our listeners can relate to.
Sure. So one of the things they found was about programmers learning software engineering principles. They found that the programmers who already knew the language Pascal, they picked up these principles faster than those who only knew Fortran.
So why is that? Is Pascal just like a better coding language?
Not necessarily, but Pascal's structure, it's more similar to those software engineering principles. It's like it gave them a bridge, a framework to understand the new concepts. Like, let's say your company wants to come up with a really cool marketing strategy for social media, right?
Sure.
If you only hire someone who's only ever worked in traditional advertising, it's like them only knowing Fortran in that study. It's a start, but they've got a steeper learning curve ahead of them.
But someone who's got experience in a similar digital field, maybe they've worked with online communities before, or they've got a background in data analysis, they'd be able to jump right in. Their diverse knowledge is like that bridge.
Exactly.
That's fascinating.
It's like having a whole team of, expert navigators. And they've each got a map, right? But each map is from a different time period. So one map might show you the old trade routes. Another one's got the hidden pathways.
I love that analogy.
But
let's get practical for a sec. We've talked about how important it is to have both those types of knowledge, the closely related and the diverse. But how do you actually make that happen across a whole company? It's easy to say hire diverse people, but how does that translate to the entire organization actually being good at learning and adapting?
And that's the real challenge. And the real opportunity, too. You're right. It's not enough to just throw a bunch of different people together and hope for the best. You got to create an environment where all that diverse knowledge can actually flow, where it gets used, not just stuck in a drawer somewhere.
It's like they say, knowledge is power, but only if it's shared. Something like that.
100%. Think about a company's knowledge, like it's their circulatory system.
Okay.
For a company to be healthy, to thrive, that knowledge has to circulate, right? It can't get stuck in one place, can't get bogged down.
So how do you actually make sure that happens?
I'm just thinking about all those meetings I've been in where it feels like information, black hole, people talking, but nothing really gets shared, nothing changes.
You've hit on something really important. It's not just about how much communication is happening, but the quality of it, the structure of it. Sometimes you need people who are like bridges between different areas, what Cohen and Levinthal call gatekeepers.
Gatekeepers!
Yeah, they're the ones who can take really complicated, specialized information and make it understandable for people in other parts of the company.
So they're like translators almost. Exactly. They've got one foot in both worlds. They get the complex stuff, but they can also break it down so everyone else can benefit. Prevents information overload, but also makes sure the good stuff gets shared.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
You don't want to drown everyone in technical details, but you also don't want to keep all the good ideas locked away in one department.
Yeah.
So when is it better to have that, like, everyone in the loop approach versus relying on those gatekeepers?
That's a great question, and it really depends. If you're dealing with super technical stuff or confidential information, then yeah, having those designated gatekeepers is smart. But if what you're after is more general innovation, then a more open approach is usually better.
So encouraging people to talk to each other more brainstorming across different teams, that kind of thing.
Exactly. Think about the companies that are known for being really innovative. They're usually the ones where everyone feels comfortable sharing ideas. Doesn't matter what department you're in, doesn't matter how much experience you have. They know that sometimes the best solutions, the most unexpected ones, they come from mixing things up a bit.
I can see that, getting different perspectives in the mix.
Mm-hmm.
But I also wonder, is there a risk there? What if a team gets so used to brainstorming on their own that they start rejecting anything from the outside?
Oh, absolutely. That's a real danger. And it's something Cohen and Levinthal actually called out. They called it the not invented here syndrome.
Oh, what?
Not invented here. Or NIH syndrome, if you want to be fancy.
It's catchy. So what is it exactly?
It's that thing where you just automatically dismiss an idea if it didn't come from your own little group. Like refusing to eat a delicious meal just because you didn't cook it yourself.
Okay, I get it. So how do you avoid that? How do you build a culture that's open and collaborative, but doesn't turn into everyone just liking their own ideas best?
Starts from the top. Leadership has to make it clear that learning is important, that getting different perspectives is valuable.
So it's more than just having a suggestion box, right? It's about actually valuing those different viewpoints, even if they challenge what you thought you knew.
Exactly. It's about realizing that nobody has all the answers and that the best insights can come from anywhere.
You know, this reminds me of something I've always found so interesting. Some Japanese companies, they rotate their R&D staff through different departments. Seems kind of counterintuitive, but I wonder if it ties into this whole absorptive capacity thing.
You're totally on the right track. That's a great example of how to build both those types of knowledge we've been talking about.
How so?
Because by moving between departments, those R&D people, they get to see the whole company, right? They're not stuck in just their little area.
It's like cross-training for their careers.
Exactly. They get exposed to different challenges, different ways of thinking, and that can lead to some really creative problem solving.
So it's not just about what you know, it's about how you open yourself up to learning more from all sorts of places.
Exactly.
This has been super insightful, but I think it's time we bring this back to what our listeners really care about, the bottom line. We've talked about how important absorptive capacity is, how to build it, but what's it actually mean for a company's success down the line?
And this is where things get really interesting. Because those decisions a company makes early on about the types of knowledge they value, how they encourage sharing and learning those decisions, have a ripple effect. They shape everything that comes after.
So paint us a picture. What's the future look like for companies that get it versus those that don't? So it's about the long game, not just winning today, but being set up to win tomorrow, even if the rules of the game totally change.
That's it. Think of it like two companies, right?
Yeah.
They both want to get into that electric vehicle market.
Okay, I'm with you.
One company, they've been all about gas engines for years. That's all they know. The other one, yeah, they've got experience with traditional cars too, but they've also been learning about battery tech, software, even renewable energy. Which one's going to have an easier time adapting?
Oh, the second one, for sure. The
Yeah.
one with the broader knowledge base, hands down.
Exactly. That's what Cohen and Levinthal were talking about with this idea of a snowball effect. The earlier you start building up your knowledge base and the more consistently you do it. It's like that snowball picking up speed, rolling downhill. It just gets bigger and faster.
Makes sense.
Yeah,
Like I say, the best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago, but the second best time is now.
exactly. You got to plant those seeds of knowledge. But there's a flip side too. If a company's been ignoring this whole absorptive capacity thing, Cohen and Levinthal, they said that can lead to lockout.
Lockout. Okay, now that sounds bad.
It is. It's like they get stuck on this one path. Maybe it worked in the past, but now they're not ready for new challenges, can't see the new opportunities.
Like showing up to a race with a horse and buggy when everyone else has a sports car. You might be good with a whip and reins, but you're in the wrong game.
Perfect analogy. And the thing is, lockout can sneak up on you. If a company's been successful doing things a certain way, they might not even realize they're missing out, just because they don't have the knowledge to see those other options.
That's a scary thought, like
Yeah.
having blinders on and missing the whole rest of the world. So for our listeners who are thinking, uh-oh, is my company locked out? What can they do? It's not hopeless, right?
Never too late to start building that absorptive capacity. But it takes a real shift in thinking. Companies can't just react to things, always playing catch up. They've got to be proactive, seeking out new knowledge all the time, new ways of looking at things.
So how do you do that? What are some practical first steps?
One of the biggest things is making learning a part of your culture. Investing in employee training, encouraging people to work with different teams, even just letting people go to conferences, workshops, that kind of thing.
So making learning and development a priority, not just an afterthought.
Exactly. And don't be afraid to bring in different perspectives. Hire people with different backgrounds, different experiences, and don't forget about partnerships.
Like working with universities or even with other companies in similar fields.
Yeah. Sometimes the smartest thing you can do is realize you don't have all the answers yourself.
This has been a really fascinating deep dive. If our listeners take away just one thing, what should it be?
That building your company's ability to learn, to adapt, to innovate. It's not a one-time thing. It's got to be continuous. It's a commitment. And the companies that get that, they're the ones who are going to thrive no matter what changes come their way.
Great advice to end on. We've explored how powerful internal knowledge can be, but what's about the world outside your company walls, all those untapped resources? That's a deep dive for another day. Until then, stay curious, keep those perspectives diverse, and remember, the future belongs to the adaptable.